IRE verbs, which are a little bit more complicated than their ERE and ARE cousins. If you're coming to this completely blind, I would suggest you watch my videos. I will link them about conjugating IRE verbs and ERE verbs. But if you sort of know what you're doing, just to recap, what we're looking at here is we are looking at verbs that end in IRE, and we're talking about how to conjugate them in the present tense. If that all sounds like gobbledygook, then I suggest you watch the previous verbs videos that I've published, which I'll link in a kind of group playlist, so you can scroll through them, or just really quickly have a look at this example. This should be obvious what we're doing if you're caught up. If you're not, as I say, please do a bit more basic research, either by watching my videos or wherever. But yeah, we're taking the verbs in the infinitive and we're conjugating them in the present tense and looking at these tables for telling us what to do, with some diagrams as well. Okay. But assuming you know what you're doing, we are going to dive in with some IRE verbs. Okay. Now, the IRE verbs, let's go over here. They come in two flavors. Okay. So we're going to have our IRE verbs here. These are going to be split into our normal IRE verbs, which I'll just put normal IRE, and something that we call our ISK verbs. Okay, nothing too complicated, but they are different and we do need to memorize the kind of rules for both of them. Let's start out with the normal verbs. So we can look at a couple of examples here, like aprire, which is, I think, was the example I gave earlier, which means open. We can also have scoprire, which means discover. Okay, so these are two normal examples. Okay, let's look at them. Again, I'm just going to give you the table for these ones. If you're not sure what this is, again, please watch the other videos, but this shouldn't... No, I can't take this together. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I'm basically just going to give you the table of what you need to do with these. Nothing complicated. So we're going to have IRE verbs. We're going to have IO, still ends in O. These are going to look very, very similar. Okay, to what we've been doing so far. So let's take a look, right? And we could have io apro. Okay, again, what we're doing, just to make it crystal clear, we're taking the IRE part of the verb and we are replacing that with one of these endings. And why are we doing that? Because we want to talk about this in the present tense. Io apro, I open. Okay, and then let's have a look at the rest. Okay, so let's just fill the rest of these in and I'll explain a bit about what's going on. So you guys open, we open, he or she opens, and you open. Okay, hopefully it makes a bit of sense. Again, if this is all too fast and you're not sure, then please have a look at these other videos, but I'll do a very brief explainer again, just from the beginning, how we got here. Okay, Italian has verbs. Verbs are doing words. They are very, very important for us to be able to work in Italian. There are three main buckets of infinitives. Verbs that end in ARE, like parlare, mangiare, chiacchierare, comunicare. We have verbs that end in... We have text boxes that get stuck for no reason. We don't like those. Okay, that is very strange. Let's clean that up. There we go. Pardon me. Sorry, I got distracted. So we have verbs that end in ARE. We have verbs that end in ERE, like leggere, cadere, sedere, volere. And we have verbs that end in IRE, like finire, capire, and pulire. Okay. I explained that I explained that IRE verbs can split into two parts, the normal IRE verbs and the ISK verbs. For example, aprire and scoprire fall into the normal category. This is a table that tells us which ending we need to replace IRE with. Okay, so if we look at aprire, we are going to pretend, okay, just for the sake of learning, we're going to write it like this. And what I'm doing is I'm replacing the IRE bit with whatever this table tells me. So when I have the EO version, the I version, we replace it with O. When I have the tool version, we replace it with I. When we have this, we replace it with this. And we get this all from this nice table here. Okay, hopefully that should make sense. Right, let's look at another example. Scoprire. Scoprire. You're going to do this example. I'm not going to pause the video. You're going to pause the video. And we're going to have a go. I will write out the placeholders for you. So again, just what I'm doing is not thinking and writing at the same time. Okay, so what we're doing is I'm just writing this out because the IRE bit is the only bit of the verb that changes. Nothing else changes. So pause the video now. I'll give it like 5 seconds and then we'll dive in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, if you haven't paused by now, then that's your fault. Io scopro. Yeah, I discover. I'm not going to write out all of these because it'll be obvious by now. I discover. Tu scopri. Lui scopre. Noi scopriamo. Voi scoprite. Loro scoprono. Okay? Where am I getting all the stuff? Just to recap for the 15th time, I am getting it from here. So that wasn't meant to be a dig. That was just meant to be, just to make it crystal clear, we are getting this from this table. All we are doing is replacing the IRE bit, this bit, with these letters. Yeah? All right. Now let's move on to the ISK verbs. Okay, the ISK verbs are a totally different beast in that they just have a different pattern. Unfortunately, the worst thing about these verbs is there is no way to tell. In fact, let's type this out because it'll be quicker. There is no way to tell just by looking at the infinitive whether a verb will be a normal IRE or an ISK verb. Okay, I'll explain what this all means in just a second, but this is an important point to recognize. Unfortunately, there is no way to tell. Now that's not a huge issue, okay, but it's just something you need to be aware. There's also I don't know, I don't think there's a huge library. Maybe there are libraries online that you can just find. I'm just having a look online now if I can see anything. I'll put something in the comments. I'll put there, yeah, some common verbs with IRE. Okay, you will just learn these as you go over time. I suggest keeping a list. Just make a folder on your desktop, whatever. Just call it ISK verbs. Okay. And why they're called ISK verbs? Well, because they have ISK in them. So let's take a verb like finire, which means finish. Okay. So one more time. Okay, we're gonna do io finisco. Okay. So this is why we call it an ISK verb. And I'll just click not io fino. So let's go back to aprire for a second. We absolutely do have io apro, but we don't have io aprisco. However, we do have io finisco. And again, there's nothing about the verb finire that tells us that it's going to be an ISK verb. It's not like, oh, it just starts with F or just whatever. There's no way to tell. No, unfortunately, there's no way to tell. So let's have a look at the rest of them. And I'll also go over some pronunciation notes briefly. All right, now you're going to say it to me, Lorenzo, why are they called ISK verbs if these ones don't even have ISK? I don't know. We don't say noi finisciamo and voi finiscite. We just say noi finiamo and voi finite. So for the ISK verbs, it's only these 4 ones that actually change. Io, tu, lui, and loro. Let's talk about some pronunciation. I'm going to just head back to the IRE verbs for a second. And I'm going to look at leggere. I talked about here that the pronunciation for io and loro is different to the rest of them. We have io leggo, loro leggono, but we have tu leggi. We don't say leggi. Similarly, whoops. Here we say finisco and finiscono. Let me make that a little bit more clear. So the isk sound in Italian has a K sound. Oh, hang on, I've messed up my color scheme. My isk sound in Italian has a K sound. Versus my SCI sound in Italian has a sh sound. So io finisco, tu finisci, lui finisce, loro finiscono. Yeah. Okay, now you can probably figure out the table by yourself. It's not too bad. So let's just add in here. So io, we have isco, tu isci. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So really the only things here you need to worry about are basic pronunciation and memorizing which verbs actually are isk and which aren't. Noi iamo, voi ite, loro iscono. Okay, I'm aware you can't see it. Give me a second. Man, let's get this nice border as well. Okay, and that is going to be that for isk verbs. Okay, I breezed through that, but that's because if you've understood everything we've talked about so far, yeah, I don't think you'll have any problem dealing and conjugating isk verbs. The only difficulty is going to be knowing which verbs are and aren't. But again, if you're reading a text and you see something like pulisce or costruiscono, you're going to pretty reliably be able to say that this comes from pulire, which is an isk verb, and this comes from costruire, which is also an isk verb, just based on seeing them like that. Okay, or hopefully that will become easier over time. All right, well done. You have conjugated 4 different verb types, IRE, ERE, IRE, and ISK in the present tense. Well done. We will continue our Italian journey in the next video.